What's up, outliers? Welcome to Performance Bites for bite sized insights into complex subjects in health and performance. Today, we're going to talk about dopamine, which I think is a really fun topic because I really believe that dopamine is misunderstood for the most part, but we're also going to tie it into training and how we can utilize it to motivate us into training, but then also understand what actually is giving us reward when we're training. And that's what makes us come back. But also, it's just a fun thing to kind of understand these things because, especially, I think dopamine as a molecule of more is a very hot topic sometimes. And when people use it as a reward based neurotransmitter, it's not quite what it is. So we'll dive into that. So before we get into essentially how it works, let's talk about what it is. So dopamine is a neurotransmitter, as I said. It is released in the midbrain. So it's a chemical known as in the category of catecholamines, but this chemical basically is released. It goes through synapse, which are the spaces in between the neurons and the brains. It binds to receptors, and then we get what we get from it, which is lovely because it has its place, especially around motivation. Very specifically, it spikes before we do something more than it spikes after. And I think that's the really important distinction to know about dopamine is it actually drives you towards something. It's like, "Hey, let's go get this. Let's go do this. This sounds good. There might be a reward here, so let's do this." And then, of course, when we do actually get a reward afterwards, which is not dopamine, but when we do get a reward afterwards, it reinforces our actions, our habits, our things that we do essentially to go, "Hey, remember when we did that one thing? It felt really nice beforehand, and then we actually got a reward after." So it's more of that thing that's going to drive us to do something because it knows that we might get something in return for it. Now, what we're ultimately actually getting in return isn't the dopamine, as I keep saying. It's the endorphins, it's serotonin, it's actually things like our opioid systems, essentially, which, if you kind of think about opioids as a drug that is commonly prescribed and used and stuff like that, it makes sense why these things are so addictive because it's tapping into reward systems that you didn't do anything for. But that's a whole other topic. Still important to note that dopamine is super, super important. It's just not those reward things that we feel afterwards. And if we think about like a simplest term of this, when we're like running or we're going to go for a run or we're going to go exercise or something like that, dopamine is going to rise, which is going to reinforce the action of going to do the thing. But ultimately, we're going to get things like the endorphins afterwards that are going to feel nice and actually going to tell us like that was something that we should have done compared to if we get a high spike in dopamine and we go and do something that we're not really that thrilled to do and we don't get much reward afterwards. That's going to basically have the communication in the brain and go, "Hey, last time we did this, it wasn't that great. I don't really know if I want to do it again." Therefore, the dopamine spike to go do it isn't going to exist. Now, obviously, for everybody, that's going to look different because we all have different interests and different drives and motivations and stuff like that. But ultimately, the dopamine is going to be just a thing on the front end of it. When we're training, we have a goal in mind. We're looking for an outcome essentially. And it's fun to kind of think about what that's gonna look like, what the planning process is gonna be, how good we're gonna be on the opposite side of whatever the training is, and that really is that dopamine piece that's important. It's also really important to note that dopamine can be really cheap or it can be really valuable. So we want more valuable dopamine essentially. We want something that's going to drive us towards something larger. It's not going to be cheap and easy. A cheap and easy version of dopamine is looking on your phone, anticipating something that is going to basically be guaranteed, right? So when we go on to social media, for example, we open up an app, we're pretty much guaranteed to find something that is going to entertain us, and that's gonna create that loop. Dopamine drives us to open up the app, we get in the app, we find something funny, cute, sweet, whatever, and that helps us to reinforce that dopamine pattern, clicking and stuff like that to open it. Now, that's obviously a not so wonderful example, but it's a very simple example that a lot of people experience. So, how can we take that example and actually apply it into our health and wellness, into our performance and stuff like that, right? So, Little goals are always good to go after, of course, because when we have a little goal in mind, that's going to be something that's a little bit smaller, a little bit more micro that we can almost hit on the daily. So, for example, that would be like I have a training program. This big goal training program has a lot of work that went into it, whether you created it yourself, worked with the coach, whatever the case be. But you know that there's a plan in place and you're going to be going towards it. So, the big goal might be in, hey, 6 months, I'm going to run a marathon, but that's 6 months down the road. So I have to wait 6 months to feel all that good stuff? Not necessarily. We want to find the micro goals within that to essentially help motivate us along the way, but also keep us coming back for more and more and more and stick to the training program. So, adaptation, that's one thing that I personally really, really tried to drive home as a coach is I want people to adapt and get better. So, if we create an adaptation as a goal, say it's a month plan, and month one, we're working on hypertrophy. So we want to see muscular breakdown and gain, which ultimately will lead to more strength, whatever the case be. So our goal in that month is to execute every single exercise and workout that is prescribed within the month. You're going to get reward. If that's the goal, you're going to get reward. So we're looking to try and utilize smaller things of finishing a workout, doing something we didn't really want to do, but we know that it's ultimately going to be good for us because it's in the program. Say it's an exercise you just like despise. A common one everybody always talks about is like Bulgarian split squats, which honestly aren't that bad. But say you really don't like those, but you do them and you gain benefit from them in your training. Say it's helping your quads get stronger, your glutes activate better. So now when you're running, you feel better, your IT band's not lighting up, stuff like that. That's going to reinforce you to go do that again and again and again because of the dopamine that is driving you to it, but then the reward that you're getting from all the endorphins and stuff like that. So those are our smaller ones. So that would be a little bit more of the easier, more obtainable things day to day that we can do within the training and utilize, our dopamine drive and our reward systems to keep us coming back. Now, if we look at a group fitness class, for example, group fitness is huge. People love it. There's nothing wrong with it whatsoever. I really want to be clear on that. There's nothing wrong with it. However, one thing that might not be happening is you're not getting as much reward as you are in the dopamine department. Showing up sometimes is the reward to these classes. I've worked in group fitness. I've seen group fitness over my 11 plus years of coaching. A lot of the times, the reward is coming from just being present and coming and doing the thing. Like I said, there's nothing wrong with that because ultimately, is that better than somebody not exercising at all? Absolutely not. This is amazing. This is great. It's getting a lot of people. Barrier to entry is lower. But at the same time, if we're looking to try and get something very large in a reward, athletically, health, something like that, adaptations, sometimes trying to find something that's going to take a little bit longer to get to it is going to be helpful. So if you are a group class person, think of it as a way of like, hey, I am going to group class. I am excited. I love showing up, all this stuff. But try to find a goal that maybe is 5 months down the road that you're going to work towards in your group fitness classes. And it might not be anything that athletically based. It just might be like, I want my knees to feel better or my shoulder. I want to improve my overhead or whatever the case be, and really work on those things for yourself because ultimately that's going to lead to a larger reward. And then you're going to have more of an intrinsic drive because of it rather than the extrinsic drive, which happens in group fitness, which sometimes is like, this person next to me is doing 20 pounds. So I'm going to do 25 pounds. That's cheap. So that's the cheap stuff that I was talking about. Trying to just beat that person day to day to day. Will it keep you going? Sure. But that's more on the cheaper level of the dopamine and the reward systems. However, we want something a little bit bigger, a little bit more obtainable that's going to help somebody continue along. Because what if that person, at the end of the day, you don't really know them? They're only doing 20 pounds because their PT said you can't do 20 pounds. And then they show up one day and they're doing 40 pounds. It's like, You don't know. It's hard to base your success off somebody else's success. So finding something that's more intrinsic is going to be a little bit better. A really good example that I really like to use is when we train for something big. I've seen this many, many times as a coach. We tend to see people go run a marathon that they trained for 4, 5, 6 months, go hike a mountain, go do a bike ride, something that is a really big feat, a century, whatever. It's very rare that an individual comes back to me and is like, "I'm so glad that I beat that person." Like, that's what I wanted to do is I wanted to beat that person. Typically, their response to these feats is more, "I'm so stoked that I did it. Like, that was such a hard thing. I trained so long for it. I'm so happy I accomplished it. I'm happy I finished it." The time or the score or whatever the case be is usually not the big topic of discussion after these things. So that's because we're building the right reward systems that are reinforcing the right patterns over time. That when we get there, we kind of don't give a shit about other people. We end up caring more about how we did, how we felt, which is great because you can compete with yourself and you can go, okay, it took me 2.5 hours to do that half marathon. Next time, I want 2 hours and 15 minutes. What can I do to build on that? So, your dopamine, then, because a new goal is being set after the goal you previously set, which is just to finish, is going to now spike up. So, now you have a big dopamine drive again, which is going to hopefully lead you to your next goal, your next goal, your next goal, which is going to continuously reinforce that pattern, which is a good pattern in a sense, right? We're training, we're doing things that are hopefully helping us be healthier, focused on recovery, focused on sleep, nutrition, hydration, all these things. So it's that pattern. We see this wave. We see people start into running's a very simple example. We see people start into this running stuff as adults, and usually starts with a 5K. It's like, oh, that felt so good. That was awesome. I really like that. Really big endorphin boost. How can I get more of that? What do I need to do for that? Dopamine is going to be present in that next goal because it was present from the get-go. You got rewarded for it, reinforcing the patterns. Now you're like, okay, well, either I want to go faster or I want to go further, and that's why all of these different run distances exist. And I've watched people literally go from running half marathons to doing ultras because it's just like this drive for more, which is why it's called the molecule of more, is something that is great. That's really good because hopefully along the way, you're learning a lot of things about yourself. You're learning a lot of stuff about the body, about your health, your wellness. You're generating maybe a community or you're joining a community, whatever the case be. And those are all great things. So it's just kind of looking at it from a place of how can I optimize my dopamine and understand what it's doing so that I can get the proper reward systems, which then can motivate me further and further. And as I'm explaining this, hopefully this is like kind of clicking with you. You're like, oh yeah, this makes a lot of sense of people when they start to where they go if they just follow that path. But there does need to be some like reward along the way. And that's what's really important, that we can't just expect dopamine to spike, get nothing in return, and then expect it to return again. And I think novelty is where people then will start to resort to try and find that new dopamine. And that's a big thing within, once again, the group fitness. There's so many different group fitness out there that people will go to it. And dopamine's high. They feel so good about showing up. They're not really getting much reward because maybe the program design or the exercise or the type or whatever isn't what they wanted it to be. And now they're not motivated to go anymore. So what do? Well, I hear there's another group fitness. I'm going to go check that one out. And I'm going to go check this one out. I'm going to go check this one out. And it's so common. And we see it so, so much. So for the people that might be stuck in that loop, if that sounds familiar, maybe sit down, evaluate a goal that is going to be outside of a group fitness class. And whether you're seeking a coach online, seeking a coach like myself in person, whatever the case be, just talk to someone See if you could set up a plan that's going to be designed for yourself, which is going to help drive you towards an actual reward that you want to achieve. That's going to be very specific for you, of course. Because going back to it, if you really think about a lot of group fitness training, I don't know what the reward is other than showing up and being with friends, which don't get me wrong, that's great. That's fun. It's really good. Community, human interactions, all great things. But what's the reward? It's hard to say sometimes. So set a goal, find something you want to do, work on that, and see the reward come around, and then watch that motivation cycle back around again because it is a continuous loop. Spike the dopamine, get a reward, it's going to rise each and every time. And then training becomes easy because all you're doing is just working within that cycle. Motivation stays there. Of course, if you're working on your health, your wellness, your recovery, your body will respond positively. It will feel good. But of course, there's always layers of everything and there's always nuance to everything. But this is my rant. This is what I really wanted to talk about. I wanted to lay a foundation of what dopamine is, but then really explain how you can utilize it within your training to ultimately feel better and also work towards your goals, get more rewards, get adaptations, get better, and work forward. So that's my tangent. Thank you for listening/watching, and I'll catch you in the next one.